Here it is, ladies and gentlemen, from NBC News. House passes anti-Semitism bill with broad bipartisan support amid campus arrests. The Anti-Semitism Awareness Act would require the Education Department to adopt the definition of anti-Semitism used by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. Oh boy, wow. It passed with 320 to 91. 21 Republicans and 70 Democrats voted against the legislation. I'm actually surprised.
Me too.
To see as many Democrats vote against it. I'm not surprised by the Republicans, but the Democratic Party is pushing very heavily away from Israel. So I guess it's not really that surprising. They say the bill, titled the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, would mandate that the Education Department adopt the broad definition of anti-Semitism used by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, an intergovernmental group to enforce anti-discrimination laws. The international group defines anti-Semitism as a certain perception of Jews, which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. I mean, that's actually very vague. The group adds that rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism include such things as calling for the killing or harming of Jews or holding Jews collectively responsible for actions taken by the state of Israel. I mean, some of these things are fair, right? The problem is, we have the bill pulled up. I'll throw it to Thomas Massey. He says today the House will vote on a bill to define anti-Semitism with the intent to increase prosecutions of activity on campuses. The bill has a problem beyond violating the First Amendment. The definition of anti-Semitism appears nowhere in the bill. To find the legally adopted definition of anti-Semitism, one must go to the website below. Not only is the definition listed here, but one also finds specific examples of anti-Semitic speech. Are those examples made part of the law itself? Do you agree with all of these examples of anti-Semitism? Should people in America be prosecuted for saying these things in all contexts? I think not. This is a poorly conceived, unconstitutional bill, and I will vote no. Well, here we are. The bill has passed, and a few important things to point out. It says Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, et cetera, et cetera. They go on to mention that there's already, I think, here we go. On December 11, 2019, Executive Order 13899 extended protections against discrimination under the 1964 Civil Rights Act to individuals subjected to anti-Semitism on college and university campuses, and tasked federal agencies to consider the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism when enforcing the Title VI of such act. Now, that's under Donald Trump. What we have here, I'll pull up Matt Walsh. Here's how he puts it. The vast majority of Republicans just voted for a bill to criminalize criticisms of the Israeli government. If the bill passes, you will be guilty of hate speech if you apply double standards to the government of Israel or accuse it of genocide. This is honestly one of the most insane pieces of legislation I have ever seen. A few examples, and then we'll just jump into it. And some of these I think are okay. It's like some of these are calling for aiding or justifying the killing or harming of Jews in the name of an ideology. Like, yeah, okay, I get that. The ones that Matt brings up, denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination by claiming that the existence of a state of Israel is a racist endeavor. That's actually pretty wild to say you are in violation of the 1964 Civil Rights Act if you think Israel is racist. I mean, that's an opinion on a state government. They say applying double standards by requiring of it a behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation. Now, look, I rag on people with what I describe as Israel derangement syndrome, but I think it's fair for people to have concerns. Like if you are critical or concerned with one government or one issue, that's not wrong. You're allowed to care about, I made the joke earlier. Can we talk about Myanmar instead? You're allowed to only care about the Philippines. You're allowed to only care about Japan. You're allowed to only care about the United States. It's actually pretty crazy that they're trying to say that's anti-Semitism. Using the symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism to characterize Israel or Israelis, drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. This is literally saying criticizing Israel's policies and drawing comparisons to the Nazis. This would be a violation of the 1964 Civil Rights Act under this new law.
So two things, right? First of all, hate speech is protected speech by the First Amendment. Like you can hate, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't need new laws to wrap up every single one of those moron commies for trespassing. Like none of that is like you can wrap every single one of them up and throw them in jail. And
You don't need a new law
Yeah,
to
you
do
don't
it.
need a new law. You don't need something that Congress passes. You don't need a law that is unquestionably in violation of the First Amendment.
But you know the reason they're doing it, right? Like, you know why this bill was even put forth. It's for Republicans to message on the bill like, hey, Jews out there, we're here, we support you, left or right, right? And it's the Democrats that aren't. And so what we're going to do is we're going to force it to be on Biden to say, you know, yes or no or whatever, and try to put him in a corner, or put this administration in a corner, and like, we're the people that are doing something. It's a messaging bill, which that's why I was surprised it wasn't a resolution, it was an actual bill. But that's what it's for. But it's horrible. But
it already accomplishes the political goal. 70 Democrats voted against it. Now the funny thing is, I don't agree with why they voted against it, which is the funny thing, because they have ideological reasons for doing so. But it was right to vote against it, so
Correct.
I'll take it. And now Democrats are going to be, look, I will tell you this. MSNBC and Fox News are aligned. This is the funniest thing imaginable. I'm seeing tweets from Morning Joe that are like, these anti-Israel protesters. And then I turn on Fox News and they're like, these anti-Israel protesters are so bad. It's crazy when on Fox News. So you had these clashes last night in the early hours of the morning where anti-Hamas, pro-Israel groups are tearing down the fortifications of the far left groups. And the phrasing of Fox News is that these people were simply defending their community. And I'm like, it's fascinating that two groups are fighting at a university. And I get it. The far left took land. They barred people from entering. They were blocking students from getting in. But my point is not to say that Fox is wrong or to get into the moral argument. It's that MSNBC and Fox agree. That blew my mind. And now you've got a bipartisan support for this bill. Amazing.
See, that just makes me nervous, right? When our politicians and our media are all lining up behind something, I feel like we should be concerned about it. In this case, I really do think that this is obviously a violation of the First Amendment. I mean, I think that hate speech laws are already usually a violation of the First Amendment. I can understand the intention to be like, we want to protect people and we want people to feel like they're not being targeted. But this, I think, is a complete misstep on Congress's part. And the thing is, if we pass bills that were like, well, this is you can't say things against white people, you can't say things against, this group and this group, whatever. It seems sort of ridiculous and redundant. I don't think that we should be singling out ethnic groups like this when we already have laws in the book that protect people from this kind, like from potential violence.
It's redundant, but it's the same thing with the BLM stuff, and everything's racist. Now it's like everything's anti-Semitic. You can't have a conversation, and it's not everything, but a lot of things have been turning into that, like the Christ is King thing, right? Like, people have been saying that for a really long time. Now, yes, some people will use it to piss off Jews. Okay, fine. But it's these words have existed this way forever, and it's not anti-Semitic if somebody's at church and they're like, Christ is King.
And I just don't feel comfortable with the idea that we would be like, well, you can't criticize this one country's government. This country's an exception. Criticize everyone else, but not this one. Well, partially because I think that list would grow. There'd be certain countries that are allowed to operate without criticism, and that's not free speech.
I'm going to need some help from the audience on this one. Maybe someone in the room can help me. Is there any other policy, any law that was enacted that says you can't criticize the policy decisions of another nation by comparing it to the Nazis? Like, is there a bill anywhere that says, like, you can't claim the Japanese are like the Nazis or something?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, because the point is then we have a double standard.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
And so I just love this, okay? It says, let's pull this one from Matt Walsh. This is from the IHRA. Applying double standards by requiring of it a behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation. And also drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of Nazis. It's almost oxymoronic. It's contradictory. And I suppose that means this bill itself is anti-Semitic, because it is requiring a standard of Israel that you cannot criticize them if you cannot criticize their policies to that of the Nazis, but you could for literally any other nation. That's a double standard. That's requiring of something of Israel that no other nation is subjected to. So this bill itself is actually anti-Semitic.
Makes sense to me. I mean, the thing is, I am wary of definitions created by a special interest group that are the main core tenet of a bill like this, right?
That's almost all bills, though, just so you know.
I know it, but that doesn't mean I can't be critical of it, right? Like, obviously anyone who is specifically here to represent the groups of special interest, totally fine. That might be your right as a lobbying group or whatever. But I think every senator or any congressman who is like, well, we should just go with it, that seems like they don't serve their people.
So it was Candace that was just on with that Rabbi Barclay, right? Who, by the way, I had an hour and a half conversation with him a couple days ago, honestly. And in that conversation, though, he said that the definition of anti-Semitism is changeable, and it morphs and it changes over time, and people use it in different ways. And I understand what he was saying in that, that people do different things now and say different things, but it's still out of their hatred for the Jews. Fine. But like, if all these groups are saying that the definition is morphing all the time, then anything can be anti-Semitic, and that's not all
it's
right.
like gender, that changes all the time too.
I'm gonna need some help from Christians. This one confused me. It says, using the symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism, e.g. claims of Jews killing Jesus.
Okay, the Romans killed Jesus. That's why.
Right. But why
But
did the
Jews
Romans?
termed them in.
Well, yeah,
Why
but
did
what they're going to say, the explanation that they're going to say
Is that-
the answer is going to say the Romans killed him, and it wasn't the actual Jews that did it.
Okay, all right. If we're talking about the technicality of it, like, it's fine, I guess. My understanding is that the belief of Christians is that the Jewish leaders in the region basically said of the Romans, he's a blasphemer and he should be held criminally liable for this. And then I believe it was it Pontius Pilate?
Yeah.
He came out and said, okay, you can choose to free one person. Was it Barabbas?
Yeah, a murderer.
The murderer or Jesus. And they're like, the murderer, not him. And so then, like, Jesus was lashed. And then, if I'm wrong about that, I just don't know. It's my general understanding. So the interpretation by, I think Vivek Ramaswamy, a fake Vivek Ramaswamy, actually, not the real one, responded, saying it criminalizes a simple aspect of reading the Bible under the guise of combating anti-Semitism. Because I assume this is correct. The interpretation of many Christians is that it was the Jewish leaders who orchestrated the death of Jesus.
I mean, this is what Matt Gaetz is saying. If you have his tweet available, I can send it to you if you want. He says the gospel itself would meet the definition.
Which one of his account? Rep Matt
Gaetz.
Yeah, he quotes the Bible in his secondary tweet on that too.
Yeah, he says the gospel itself would meet the definition of anti-Semitism under the terms of this bill, right? Like, this bill, I think part of it is the pressure that these protests are putting on lawmakers to act and have some sort of grandiose grandstanding where they're like, the same thing with Harvard when they finally, let Claudine Gay go, pretending it wasn't for what we all know it was for. They were like, but we're going to keep the anti-Semitism task force because we're taking it seriously if we formed a bureaucratic task force to deal with something. That's how you know.
So we have this. This is the tweet from Rep Matt Gaetz. He says, this evening, I will vote against the ridiculous hate speech bill called the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. And now you know why he couldn't be here. So shout out to Matt Gaetz. We're big fans. He's the best member of Congress, in my opinion. Thomas Massie is up there, too. And we disagree on things, but Thomas Massie is pretty great. Anti-Semitism is wrong, but this legislation is written without regard for the Constitution. He says the gospel itself would meet the definition of anti-Semitism under the terms of this bill. He goes on to say, Acts 4:10, be it known to you all, and to all the people of Israel, that by the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, whom you crucified, whom God raised from the dead, by him this man is standing before you well. Then you have Thessalonians 2:14-16. For you suffered the same things. I'm skipping through a little bit. For you suffered the same things from your own countrymen as they did from the Jews, who killed both the Lord Jesus and the prophets. And Acts 3:14-15. You denied the holy and righteous one, and asked for a murderer to be granted to you, and killed the author of life, whom God raised from the dead. To this we are witnesses. Now, I am not stating that. I'm simply reading Bible passages from a member of Congress who is saying this bill would make the Bible itself an act of anti-Semitism. And so what? Now, if you go to the university and you read those passages, they could charge you or fine you under the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Would this mean that at these universities, if a professor reads these passages, the university is now in violation of the 1964 Civil Rights Act? I mean, I got to be completely honest. If that's the case, then the Quran is banned as well, because the Quran says much, much more than this. We were talking about this the other night. Mm-hmm. The Quran has numerous statements, and don't get me started on the Hadith. The Hadith would not be allowed anywhere. Mm-hmm. So this bill,
And it would
Ridiculous.
disproportionately affect Christian universities, right? If you're an explicit Christian university, that's part of the course curriculum as well as student code of conduct or whatever else. Like there is a probable chance that you're more likely than just any university to quote these kinds of passages and therefore be in the crosshairs of the Department of Education, which if we reelect Joe Biden would go after you.
The good thing is it's unlikely to get through the Senate and actually pass the Senate.
You think?
Yeah, I
Really?
think that, because everybody's going to be talking about it and it's a violation. And then if anybody gets charged under it, it'll go to the Supreme Court. I just think that they're going to hold it for a while, maybe not even bring it to the floor, not get it out of markup and see. And I just don't see
I
it.
wouldn't be
going
surprised
through.
if every Republican starts virtue signaling, saying we must pass this bill, and trying to put pressure on Democrats because the goal, as you said, is a messaging bill to make it look like Democrats won't support the Jewish community.
Yeah, I could see that. But I still don't think it's going to, I just have a feeling that it's not going to make it through. I think that would be egregious. That's just me though.
Or if it did, would Biden sign it?
I mean, I feel like he would kind of have to because that's the point of the bill and the voting bloc that he's courting now currently with the policies that they're kind of pushing for.
Well, and he can't be the president that, made the economy terrible, banned TikTok, and then voted against the anti-Semitism bill. Like, there's no way, even his advisors can see that messaging is bad.
Yeah, it's probably true.
I also, though,
Even
feel
though
like
this bill is bad, and I think he shouldn't sign it. I just want to be clear on that.
I think Republicans know it's a bad bill. They wanted to get the message out. They got the message out. They put them on the defensive, and that's all they really need.
I think that's a stupid risk to take, honestly. I get what you're saying. I totally agree with you. I think that is part of it. They want to be the ones who are like, look, we're on your side. Vote for us. But I just think it's, stupid to put forward bills that are bad, that hurt your First Amendment protections, and just pass it off as like, oh, well, we wanted to seem like we were on the right side of history. Like, no, thank you.
But it is working. I mean, when I go out with James and we're like filming people on the street, I've run into Jewish people in Philadelphia and they're like, we hate Trump. We hate Trump. But what's going on with Israel? We're going to vote for him.
Michael Rappaport.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at this guy.
Right.
I mean, he was so into making videos hating Trump, he made fun of himself for making fun of Trump so much. That's how much he was. And now he's like, voting for Pig Dick Donald Trump is on the table. Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.